How I found out about my wife's affair. I'm writing this because of the shocking way I found out about my wife's years of cheating behind my back. There are two parts to this story. The first isn't that shocking and describes how I discovered her affair the first time. The second part, how I found out the second time, is truly astonishing. Part 1. It all started when I was living in South Korea, teaching English. I met my wife there, she's Korean, and things started off well. We had our arguments, but I believed we loved each other. After a few years of marriage, we decided to move to the US. I was tired of teaching English, and she wanted to become a nurse in America. She had worked as an ER nurse in Korea. Her English was okay, but she wanted to become fluent. So before we immigrated, she started studying English and attending an English academy where she spent long hours. After some time at that academy, and before we returned to the US, I began to notice some changes in her. First, there's this Korean messaging app called Kakao Talk. It's basically the Korean equivalent of Facebook Messenger. Everyone uses it. She used to have a photo of the two of us as her profile picture on the app. She even made sure my profile had our picture too. But one day I noticed she had removed all our photos from her profile. I confronted her about it. I don't remember the excuse she gave, but when I asked her to put our picture back, she flat out refused. She made it seem like it wasn't a big deal and I was overreacting. I knew something had changed. I also noticed that her attitude toward me had become more confrontational and demeaning. Still, I didn't suspect she was cheating. I should have, but she always said she loved me deeply and would never betray me. I guess I believed her. There were a few nights when she didn't come home. Each time she had a plausible excuse. The night I found out, she told me she was staying with her sister because she needed to take her and her husband to the airport early the next morning. It was probably the third or fourth time I had to spend the night alone in our apartment, and I started feeling lonely. I messaged her on Kakao Talk. Not only did she not respond, I could see she hadn't even read the messages. The app shows whether someone has seen a message. Later, I would find out she had blocked me, so she never even received them. I called her, no answer. Waited, then called again, still no answer. Kakao Talk also shows who is currently online, and I noticed her sister, the one she said she was staying with, was active on the app. So I called her sister, asked if my wife was there, and explained that she had told me she would be spending the night there. Her sister sounded shocked. From her tone and reply, it was clear she knew nothing about this. She hadn't seen my wife and didn't know where she was. What I didn't know then was that right after our call, her sister called my wife to find out what was going on. My wife probably lied to her too, but her sister somehow convinced her to call me. So she called, and I was furious. I knew she had lied. I told her she better come home now, or our marriage was over. When she got home, she told me to get in her car and started spinning a story, likely the same one she gave her sister, about not wanting to tell me, but that she had gone clubbing with some single girlfriends. She made it sound like she was just helping them meet guys and wasn't looking for anyone herself. I said, "Give me your phone," and basically yanked it out of her hand. I opened Kakao Talk, tapped on the first chat, and started scrolling, snapping photos of the messages. That's when the truth came out. The messages I captured were from a teacher at the English academy she was attending. I only managed to get a few photos before she took the phone back, crying and begging me to stop because she didn't want to hurt me more. But what I saw was enough. They were in a sexual relationship, and he was the person she had been with that night. She eventually admitted that she liked him and had been having an affair with him. I was crushed. We were literally a month away from flying to the US together. Her green card had already been approved, and I had no real support network there. You see, teaching English in Korea is usually temporary. Most native speakers are on 1 year contracts and leave after a year or two. By that time, we had been married for 3 years, and I didn't really go out much. Most of my friends had already gone back to their home countries. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry, and promised it would never happen again. You know how it goes. At first, I said absolutely not. I was going back alone, but I was completely shattered. My whole world had collapsed. After a while, I just couldn't bear the thought of that 18-hour flight by myself. I was in pieces, so I decided to give her a second chance. We stayed together and moved back to the US. Part 2. The first year back was pretty rough. Trying to find work outside of teaching with a resume limited to teaching time in Korea wasn't easy. I ended up surviving mostly by doing DoorDash and some part time gigs. Eventually, we were forced to move in with my parents due to financial constraints. There, I landed a job at a really good company, the same one I had worked at for a year before moving to Korea. If I had been smarter, we would have stayed with my parents for a while from the beginning and gotten settled there. Anyway, after working there for a year, my wife also got hired at the same company. Now that we were both earning decent salaries, we moved into our own apartment. Things seemed to be going well, but we still had our fights, and sometimes it felt like she was deliberately pushing me away. Some of the things she got mad about made me scratch my head and think, why the hell is she getting so upset over this? I remember once I used to always leave my Monster Energy cans by the sink and pour them out the next time I did the dishes. Usually, I never finished the whole can and would just leave them there. As far as I remember, she had never mentioned that she didn't like it. But one day, she just snapped and said something like, "Why do you leave those there? I told you not to do that. Dump them out right now, or next time I'll pour them all over your pillow." When she got angry, she could be really demeaning and say hurtful things. She'd apologize later, but the ongoing arguments and growing emotional distance eventually led us to decide on a divorce around fall 2024. She had been going back to Korea for a few weeks every year since we moved to the US to visit her family and friends. In 2024, she planned another trip during the winter. Our divorce process was still ongoing at that time. We were still living together since neither of us could afford to break the lease and move out. We were essentially living like friends, actually, friends with benefits. I still loved her. While she was in Korea, one day she called me in tears. She said she had received an angry Kakao Talk message from the wife of the man she cheated on me with 4 years ago. My wife claimed she had confessed everything to this woman. Later, she said the woman had sent her a legal notice threatening to sue her. That's right. While adultery is not a criminal offense in South Korea, it's still considered a civil offense, and you can sue the person your spouse cheated with for damages. As an American, that's a really strange concept, but it's true. You can do that in Korea. I was stunned. She had to tell me because she was now scared of the legal consequences and needed money to hire a lawyer. She asked me to help her get a 401k loan through work to cover the cost. I asked how the guy's wife could have found out about something that happened so many years ago. She explained that they had communicated during the affair through essays she wrote while attending an English academy, and that the wife must have read them. I figured maybe he had cheated again recently with another student in the same way, and his wife went through his files and stumbled on those essays. But I kept questioning the timing. It seemed awfully strange that his wife contacted mine right when she was back in Korea. I mean, what are the odds? She could have discovered the affair at any time in the last 4 years, but it just so happened while my wife was in Korea. It didn't sit right. It felt more likely that something had happened between them during this trip, and the wife found out. I told my wife that, but she firmly denied it. She insisted they hadn't seen or spoken to each other since the original affair, which happened before we came to the US. So foolishly trusting her, I chalked it up to him possibly cheating again, which caused his wife to dig deeper and discover the old affair with my wife. Since she was already in Korea, she used her credit card to hire a lawyer. She got me to sign over the legal rights so that she could sue the guy on my behalf. Since we were still legally married in Korea, I had the right to sue him. I didn't want to be involved, but all I had to do was give my permission, and she would handle the rest. A couple of months later, the guy she had cheated with learned that he was being sued by me. Somehow he got my email address and reached out. What he told me completely shocked me. He apologized and seemed genuinely sincere. He told me they had indeed met when she went back to Korea in late 2024. She contacted him the day after arriving and asked to meet up. At the time, he was trying to have a second child with his wife and didn't want to see her, but he was worried ignoring her might escalate the situation and possibly involve his wife. They had lunch and she wanted to sleep with him, but he pretended not to notice and dropped her off at the subway. A few days later, she messaged him saying she still had deep feelings and asked if he felt the same. She wanted to meet again and have sex. Trying to put an end to it, he told her clearly that he didn't have any feelings for her and didn't want to see her again. That's when she apparently flew into a rage. She must have gotten his wife's phone number either from his car or by searching for her on Kakao. Turns out it was my wife who contacted his wife and confessed everything. I know this because I asked him for proof, and he sent me screenshots of the messages my wife had sent to his wife on Kakao. So it turns out the only reason his wife ever found out was because my wife told her. After his first email, even before he replied to my follow up questions, something just clicked in my head. What he said made way more sense than what my wife had been telling me. Something definitely happened between them during her last trip to Korea. The confession she made to his wife was intense. Feeling betrayed by him, she told his wife everything. She described how they had continued to communicate over the years via Instagram, Snapchat, Google Docs, and more. They met in 2023 when she visited Korea. She even booked a hotel. From her confession, it's obvious she was deeply in love with him. She was even doing online tutoring sex talk lessons with him until around summer 2024. All that time, she had insisted there had been absolutely no contact between them since 2020, when the original affair happened. Now, with solid proof and still in disbelief, I knew I had to confront her and give her one final chance to tell the truth. I told her something had been bugging me. I explained that the timing of his wife finding out while my wife was in Korea didn't sit right with me. I said it seemed far more likely that something had happened during the trip and his wife found out. She still denied it, still stuck to her story that they had never seen or spoken to each other since we moved to the US. Well, I had the proof now, so I flat out told her I knew she was lying, and I showed her the evidence. Only then did she finally admit it. I know there's always some crazy story about how people find out their spouse cheated, but I'm still stunned at how this all unfolded. If my wife hadn't, in a fit of rage, reached out to his wife and confessed everything, and if we hadn't been in a country like South Korea where you can sue the person your spouse cheats with, I never would have known. It's only because of that lawsuit that he ever reached out and told me the truth. I know I wasn't the best husband, and communication was always a bit of a struggle due to the language barrier. I think during her time at the English Academy, they must have really bonded. He probably connected with her emotionally in ways I never could. He spoke her language, listened to her, comforted her. That's why she formed such a deep bond with him. That's why it hurt her so much when he ultimately pushed her away. That's my story. I hope it helps someone.